It's as close to time travel as we're gonna get. This Week in Music History with Marty Miller.
That would be me, and this is where we go through a week in music history with a very bite-sized podcast. We are looking at the week of October 13th to 17th. Now, in 1987, Def Leppard gave us a rather big record. And in 1988 this week, they set a rather big record.
Hysteria took 3 years to make. Well, did it really?
Bono was on the back foot this week in 2014.
I'm sorry about that. I had this beautiful idea. Mona got carried away with ourselves.
And in 2006, the club that launched 1 million careers closed its doors. This is Blondie drummer Clem Burke.
What was great about CBGB was the payphone. The great thing to do, like when we were in Europe, we would call Colette.
This Week in Music History with Marty Miller.
Do you remember when Ringo Starr appeared in an episode of The Simpsons? And this was the general gist of what went on.
Sir, if you'll forgive an old Brit for his impertinence, your devotion to your fans is nothing short of remarkable.
Well, Weatherby, they took the time to write me, and I don't care if it takes me another 20 years. I'm going to answer every one of them.
Well, then in 2008, in real life, not in The Simpsons, he actually came out with, obviously, lots of peace and love, but he was asking for a change.
Peace and love, peace and love. I want to tell you, please, after the 20th of October, do not send fan mail to any address that you have. Nothing will be signed after the 20th of October. I'm warning you with peace and love, but I have too much to do. So no more fan mail. Thank you, and no objects to be signed. Nothing. Anyway, peace and love, peace and love.
1977 this week, David Bowie gave us his 12th studio album, The Brilliant Heroes, the second instalment of his Berlin Trilogy. David Bowie loved living in Berlin.
I had an apartment there above an auto shop on the Hauptstrasse. I went back to see it on the last tour, and I really got pangs of... it really became a home for me, Berlin, at that time. It was a good place to be. I enjoyed it because there seemed to be such a lot happening in Berlin at the time.
In 1988 this week, Def Leppard became the first act in chart history to sell 7 million copies of 2 consecutive records. Pyromania, their third album, which came out in 1983, and Hysteria, which became the band's biggest selling album to date, selling over 20 million copies. Here's Joe Elliott.
Hysteria took 3 years to make. Well, did it really? We started writing the album in February of 1984, and it was released in August of 1987, so you could say it was actually even longer. But the fact is that we didn't start recording until August of 84. That was with a guy called Jim Steinman, and all those sessions were scrapped. So the actual record that you hear didn't really get recorded until mid-85. So truth is, the album actually that you listen to when you hear the album Hysteria took about 18 months to record.
More Beatles on The Simpsons, and 1995. Paul and Linda McCartney were the guest voices on the show in an episode called Lisa the Vegetarian. Paul McCartney's stipulation for appearing on The Simpsons was that Lisa's decision to become a vegetarian would be a permanent character change, and that is the way it stayed.
Wow, Paul McCartney! I read about you in history class. But where's your wife, Linda?
Right here, Lisa. Whenever we're in Springfield, we like to hang out in Apu's garden in the shade.
We met him in India years ago during the Maharishi days. Back then, I was known as the fifth Beatle. Sure you were, Apu.
Meanwhile, this week in 2014, Bono announced that he was sorry after U2's latest album was automatically added to all of our libraries if we used iTunes. Every user around the world getting their album. So he said the move was a drop of megalomania, a touch of generosity, but people were really pissed off about the whole thing. So the 11-track Songs of Innocence had to come up with a way for people to delete it.
Can you please never release an album on iTunes that automatically downloads to people's playlists ever again? It's really rude.
Oops. I'm sorry about that. I had this beautiful idea. Mona got carried away with ourselves. Artists are prone to that kind of thing.
1972, Creedence Clearwater Revival called it a day following the failure of their most recent album, Mardi Gras. Meanwhile, John Fogerty still believes
the most important thing in life is love, finding love. Yeah. And I found love. And I realize that that's the most valuable thing that for me, that I desire, and I dare say probably for everybody in the world. So worrying over all the things that went wrong that have something to do with, material things, while yes, they are important, it's not the end of the world for me, because I have what is really important. Every day when I wake up, I can look at her and realize that I'm a winner.
Nearly its 20th anniversary already, CBGB, the club, the legendary club credited with discovering the likes of Patti Smith, Ramones, Blondie, Talking Heads. Well, it closed in 2006, and here's Clem Burke, drummer with Blondie, talking about...
What was great about CBGB was the payphone. The great thing to do, like when we were in Europe, we would call collect. We reverse charges to the payphone at CB's.
Yeah.
And of course, back in the day, collect call from blah blah blah, and someone would be at the other end and pick it up and accept the charges. But because it was a payphone, no one was paying.
Sadly, even Clem is gone now. 1973 this week, the Rolling Stones were playing a gig in Brussels, but saxophonist Bobby Keys didn't show up for the concert, which resulted in him being banned by Mick Jagger from future tours. Now that lasted until around 1989, with occasional exceptions. The story goes why Bobby Keys missed his gig was he filled a hotel bathroom with Dom Perignon champagne, drank most of it with female company in the bath. That's rock and roll.
Played sax for Elvis on Return to Sender.
Bobby's delivery is more guitar-like than any other horn man I know.
We had to find a rocker, and he was the only one.
Moves, plays the saxophone in one giant swagger.
He has that looseness about the rock and roll. He knows how to roll.
And in 2005 this week, Freddie Mercury's 1974 Rolls-Royce Silver Shadow failed to sell at an eBay auction. Why? Well, it didn't meet its reserve price. It had been listed by his sister Kashmira Cook, who had inherited the car from him. Now, that motor, it played a part in some Queen history, actually.
It was a freezing cold day, and we were all there, and Freddie upstaged everybody by arriving in his brand new Roller, which we also felt he couldn't probably afford. Freddie insisted that we sign the contracts, all of us together, in the back of his Roller, because this was the first Rolls he'd ever owned.
And that is a look at this week in music history. That is October 13th to 17th in less than 10 minutes. My name is Marty Miller. Thanks for listening. We'll do it all again next week.
Zipping through a week in a matter of minutes. This Week in Music History, the podcast.